Blair Whitaker was 6 years old when her parents both died in a car accident. Somehow, Blair survived. When she woke up in the hospital, it was clear she had almost no memory of the past 6 years of her life. She was to be put into the care of her aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker. The doctor explained that Blair showed signs of repressed memory caused from the trauma that went beyond the car accident. The Whitakers understood what the doctor meant. At the age of 4, Blair had been kidnapped and was abused for 1 year before she was found in the kidnapper's basement along with 6 other children. She came back a completely different child. She trusted no one, barely spoke, and showed aggression behaviors. But after 1 month of being home, a switch flipped, and she returned to her old self as if nothing had happened. Since Blair had no memories of any of this, the Whitakers thought she could start over with a new happy life and that the worst was behind them, until 1 year later when the blackout started.
Blair was in first grade. There was a worker on a ladder painting the walls of the hallway at Blair's elementary school. As she was walking by, she saw the paint cans full of red paint. Without realizing, she sticks both of her hands into the paint and begins to finger paint the wall. The man sees her and begins to yell. Her face suddenly goes blank as she pushes the ladder over, causing the man to fall and get injured. The paint can he was holding falls and splashes all over her. Many people flooded out of the classrooms and saw the scene of the man under the ladder squirming in pain and Blair crying covered in paint. From that day on, her peers and even teachers remember her as a girl covered in red until eventually her identity had become Red, a nickname she eventually grew fond of. The only thing she remembers of the incident is the students flooding into the hallway and being covered in red paint with a painful migraine. Similar accidents like this continued to occur over a period of 2 years. Blair would black out and wake up with a migraine standing near someone that was injured. The Whitakers try to hide the truth and don't tell her of her involvement in injuring those people, and they try to keep her in the house as much as possible to avoid more episodes.
Eventually, the Whitakers decide it is time to find out what was going on. They were afraid to seek out a normal doctor for fear that Blair would be deemed crazy and taken away from them. Their first stop is a Native American shaman. "Your child has a wolf spirit inside of her," says the shaman. "It has come from much pain and cruelty. There is an old legend of the birth of the wolf man in our tribe. There was a man with 2 cruel wives. He tried to turn them good by moving away for a time. The 2 women were angry and plotted to kill their husband. Every night he would sit on a large buffalo skull at the top of a hill to look for approaching enemies. The women dug a deep pit there and covered it and placed the skull on top. When the men went to sit, he fell in the pit and the women left him and rode back to the main camp and faked mourning, the man saying that he was dead. The man was badly injured, but was found by a wolf who pitied him and called him his animal brothers to dig the man out. The wolf took him to an old blind wolf with powerful medicine that healed the man, but turned his head and hands into a wolf. In return, the man helped the wolves and animals steal meat from the main camp. Eventually, he was caught, and the truth of what the women had done was revealed, and they were banished. Mrs. Whitaker replied, "That's a great story and all, but how do we get rid of this spirit?" The shaman replied, "You do not. The spirit is part of her and meant to be her protector. You should embrace the spirit, not condemn it."
Unsatisfied with his answer, the Whitakers decide to travel to Nigeria to seek out a famous shaman that specializes in spirit possession. The Nigerian shaman says, "Your child is indeed possessed by the wolf spirit, and this one is very dangerous. Your daughter has gone through a trauma that allowed a powerful wolf spirit to manifest in her. We have a special proverb here. The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. We call these the stone children. They have been abandoned unloved, and treated with cruelty. They wish to belong, but they become cold and isolate themselves. They are defensive and untrusting, and their behaviors are fueled by fear of the world. They run on instincts and have incredibly heightened abilities and awareness of the world around them. Okay, but can you help us get rid of it? The shaman states, I cannot. The wolf spirit is bound to her for life. However, I can help you control it. This bracelet will help your daughter to manage the spirit, but I warn you not to underestimate it. He then gives Blair the magical bracelet to suppress her other identity form from the wolf spirit.
5 years later, Blair enters high school and has not had any incidents since being gifted the bracelet, but she has never been allowed to take it off. Mr. Whitaker has a job at the school as an English teacher, and Mrs. Whitaker as a librarian, in order to watch over Blair. They also have been using art as a therapy to keep Blair calm and under control, as well as to avoid confrontation or stressful situations. Blair has fallen in love with art, even though it is being used as an outlet for her negative emotions. She even has a secret shed in the woods off the cross-country running trails of the school where she does art in peace.
This peace does not last for long as a boy, Jack West, in Blair's grade, begins to stalk and bully her, causing her wolf spirit to become more active. Little by little, the wolf gains more strength and motivation to take control because his job is to protect them. And eventually, the feelings of danger cause the wolf's identity to be triggered and take over once again, and the bracelet breaks. Ha ha ha, what a weak loser. What's wrong, Red? Are you going to cry again? Go cry to mommy and daddy. Leave me alone! The wolf spirit takes over and gets up and beats up Jack. Wolf goes, if you ever come near me again, you won't be able to walk away. So Jack runs away. Jack stops bothering Blair for several days. She goes back to her normal life, except now she can communicate with her wolf spirit and feels more whole. Blair is walking to her art shed in the woods while having a conversation with the wolf. So you mean to tell me that all this time, this bracelet has been suppressing you, and you are meant to be my protector? Yes, I've been locked up in our mind for all this time by your parents when I was only trying to protect you. If I had known, I would have taken it off long ago. I'm sorry, Wolf. Don't call me Wolf. I have a name. Blair. Oh, what is your name then? It's Hunter.
Okay then, I'll call you Hunter from now on.
What Blair and Hunter didn't know was that Jack had been following them and overheard everything. Blair and Hunter were still conversing in the art shed while Blair was painting when Jack sneaks in and begins to attack her. Jack goes, "Who are you talking to, freak? The voice in your head? What are you, a psycho?" Hunter thinking, "Blair, let me take over. I can protect us." Blair goes, "Are you going to fight him? What if we get hurt? Let's just run away." Hunter says, "No, let me fight him. Don't resist me. Let me do this so he stops bothering us." Hunter takes over and fights Jack and knocks over a lantern in the process, and the shed begins to burn down. Jack gets hit in the head by a falling beam and falls unconscious.
Hunter is struggling to breathe as the shed fills with smoke. "This is why you need to let me take control more so I can protect us," says Hunter. Hunter packs all their belongings of art and escapes the shed and begins to run. Suddenly something stops his body. It was Blair. "How did it come to this?" says Blair. "Who cares? We need to leave," says Hunter. "No, we can't let him die. We have to save him. He deserves it. This is his fault. He attacked you, Red. Please, Hunter. It is the right thing to do." "Fine." Hunter angrily drops their things and runs back to his shed, but the door is blocked. He breaks the window and climbs through to get inside. He uses some rags and removes the beam blocking the door and drags Jack out. He then calls 911, grabs their things and runs off into the woods and back home. The fire department arrives within minutes and is able to put the fire out and sends Jack on his way to the hospital.
The arson team arrives and investigates the shed. They determine that a kerosene lantern was the initial cause of the fire. The fire then spread and reached the rags and paint thinner supplies that were laying around the shed, causing it to rapidly burn down the shed. Further investigation of the glass from the window shows that it was broken from the outside, proving that someone broke into the shed. They dust the door and around the window to the shed and are able to lift various prints. They also dust the remaining paint cans. The lab was able to identify 2 sets of prints around the shed door and 1 set around the window. The authorities then tie the paint thinner back to Blair, with the aid of video cameras in the store and receipts at the time of purchase. They also discover unused portions of the same paint thinner at Blair's home.
The authorities question Blair and her adoptive parents, and she explains what happened in the shed and how Jack had attacked her and how she was trying to protect herself. They knew something was missing, and eventually Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker confessed about the spirit that was possessing Blair. Mr. Whitaker replies, "Please, officer, do not take Blair away. She is a good child. It is just the wolf spirit that made her act violently. She would never harm a soul." The officer replies, "Your daughter did nothing wrong. She acted in self-defense and even saved her attacker from the looks of it. That wolf spirit doesn't sound as evil as you seem to think it is. We're going to call a psychologist that specializes in these sort of cases that I think may help you and your daughter come to an understanding." Once the psychologist arrives, she speaks first to Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker about Blair's entire life story, from her traumatic experiences to the most recent incident with the art shed. She then has a one-on-one with Blair. "Hello, Blair. I'm Red," Blair replies. "Pardon?" says the psychologist. "My name. People call me Red." "Ah, I see. Red. And why is that?" I don't remember," says Blair. "One day people just started calling me Red, and I didn't mind. It's my favorite color." "Well, that's lovely. Do you often have issues with remembering things?" says the psychologist. Blair replies, "Sometimes, but it's only short periods of time that are kind of blank. And I will wake up in a situation not knowing how I got there." The psychologist replies, "I see. Do you experience migraines when this happens?" Blair replies, "Yes." "And do you ever hear voices in your head? Voices that aren't your own?" says the psychologist. "Don't be scared, Red. I'm here to help you." Blair replies, "Yes, I do. He protects me." The psychologist says, "Oh, it's a boy? Does he have a name?" Blair smiles. "Yes, his name is Hunter."
After speaking for a long time, the psychologist was able to discover the truth of Blair's condition. In the human world, Blair's disorder is known as DID, dissociative identity disorder. The psychologist explains to Blair's parents that their attempts to suppress and hide Blair's condition was wrong. They should have taken Blair to a medical professional as soon as they could in order to diagnose her and help her manage the disorder. They also should be embracing the condition and who Blair is, as well as her other identity. They should not be afraid of her because, contrary to popular belief, she is not a monster. She is just broken into several pieces that allow her to mentally survive the cruel reality of her past.